Welcome to Universal Man. My name is Mark Weppett, and I'm here to help you play a bigger game with your life and become a man that you admire by mastering yourself, optimizing your lifestyle, and conquering your goals. And today I am back with sort of another episode of the Man of Action series. This is kind of a more informal episode. As you can tell, I'm not in my normal environment. I'm kind of using my mobile setup at the moment because I'm traveling to do some of the lockdown with my wife's family. So things are a little bit nuts in the world. Things have been locked down for a while. I know many of you guys have been struggling with this. It's been challenging on my end too. And so what I wanted to do in this episode is talk about a mental technique that I've personally been using for years. And I've shared with my Patreon community and stuff like that, but I wanted to share it with you guys because I think it's really, really valuable for a time like this. Now, before we jump into that mental technique, I just want to take a second to tell you guys that right now, the Reforged Man course, my big kind of flagship course on quitting porn and healing your brain, and basically it's like the thing I've spent years developing for masculine development and that sort of thing. It's currently on sale, 20% off, and I definitely think you should grab it if you're struggling during this lockdown period, watching porn, all that kind of stuff. You can get the code in the description below. So, with that out of the way, let's start getting into this conversation here. Okay, so the core problem that I'm looking to tackle is, basically thinking, feeling, and acting like a loser. Basically, meaning you're feeling like you are losing, and you're thinking like you are, and then it feels like it, and then you do the actions that align with that sort of identity, right? And this is a state that many of us fall into, where we feel like we're just not on top, we're not doing the things that are moving us forward. We feel like each situation, it's a loss, big ol' L's going down the board. And so the reason why I've been struggling with some of this lately is because I'm kind of overwhelmed. There's a lot of things going on in my life. Like, for one, I have a family member who I love very dearly who's struggling with really some mental illness, and I'm more or less responsible for helping them, and it's very challenging. So that's one thing. Next thing, we got lockdown. So, I got lockdown and I have a baby. And so we got to figure out how to care for the baby during lockdown, which is kind of nuts. Because especially, she just started walking. And so she literally just walks around the house and opens everything up and, is needy and cries and all that kind of stuff. So that's fun. Then got a business, got to try and keep the business going. And then there's also a move that I have to deal with that we've got to try to figure out how to move my family for some personal reasons here. So all of these things are kind of crashing together at the same time in my head. And, the temptation for me is to freeze, to escape, to lash out, to get upset, just get overwhelmed, get shut down, and to be everything but a man of action. And, I definitely, I'd be lying if I said I was perfect during this time period. I absolutely have not been, but I've been all right, and I'm getting better and better because I'm leaning into what we'll be getting into in a second here. But just like with anything, before we really get to the solution, we got to understand the problem. Why do people fall into dysfunctional states when they're dealing with a lot of stuff? If you really break it down, I think, there's a few different pieces of it. One is that they're overloading their conscious capacity for managing different variables. Like, you can only think about so many different things at once. And if you try to think about all of these things at once, your brain just it's like imagine someone keeps handing you objects, okay? And if you keep trying to hold them, eventually they're just going to start spilling out of your hand, right? And that's essentially what your brain does if you keep handing it stuff to think about. So if I try to think about all the things on my plate right now, it's just like, it just falls out, and my brain just rebels and says, nope, can't do that. I want to go on Reddit or something like that, all right? So that's one big problem. Next piece is that your head is thinking about some issue that you're not currently operating on. So, for example, say I'm in a conversation with that family member that I'm trying to help, and I'm interacting with them, but my head is also thinking about all the work that I'm not doing while trying to help them. Okay? Basically, my head is in a game that I'm not playing. And if your head is in a game that you're not playing, then you're always losing that game. Um, so that's a really bad strategy, but a lot of us do this. We're constantly thinking about things that we're not actively affecting. And it's not like we're thinking productively, like imagining how we could solve the issue. We're just thinking about the fact that we're losing the game, but we're not playing it. So that's just complete waste of energy for the most part. I mean, yeah, you can acknowledge it and be like, okay, I need to do something about it. But like, if you're staying in that spot, you're not going to be getting too much benefit from that kind of thought process. And some people, this is literally what they do. They think about things that have happened in the past, like, oh, this bad situation happened. They just keep running through it. And they're just reliving the loss over and over and over again. And so instead of just having one isolated instance where things go bad, they carry that with them, and it just stays bad for a much longer period of time, and they get nothing out of it. So that's not helpful. Additionally, doing that like in the future, thinking about all the things I have to take care of in the future, but not actually doing it productively, just thinking about, oh, it's a problem. Here's a problem. I'm not solving the problem, but I'm thinking about the problem. So you're entering into this loss state where physiologically your body releases, cortisol. You feel stressed, all this kind of stuff. It just stinks. So there's that. And then the final piece here, how we get ourselves tied up in knots, is that we play games that we have no control over. So like, for example, if you're trying to control another person, automatically you are at a disadvantage because you can't control that person. You can control you, but you cannot control them. So if you're focusing on some outcome that requires you to control them, you're automatically in a victim state because you're helpless to some degree. Yes, there's, levels of influence that you can exert, and sometimes you're going to have to do that kind of stuff. But if you're focusing on something you cannot control like them, it's going to feel bad. All right. Same thing if you're trying to control the economy. If you're focusing on, how the economy is going to go right now because of this lockdown thing. Well, you don't really have too much control over that. Right. And so if you're just thinking about this thing you are so helpless in, you're going to feel helpless. Heck, even sometimes like trying to control your own emotions is a bit of a losing battle. Right? You can always control your response to your emotions, but you can't necessarily control what is there in the first place. And so if you're just focusing on, I'm upset and I don't want to be upset. I'm such a, I'm sad and I don't want to be sad, or I'm scared. It's like I'm such a wuss. I shouldn't be scared right now. If you've got this layer of judgment between you and the actual experience you're having, then you're not actually going to be able to work with that emotion and lead it to a better spot. You're just going to be blocking yourself. So this is the kind of stuff that we all fall into, I fall into, and it doesn't help us really at all. And it's not even like it's not even one of those things that's sort of necessary. It's one of those things that if we can improve our mental conditioning, our mindset, that sort of thing, we don't actually need to ever go here. And that would be the goal, right? And so the question is, how do we do this? Well, the term that I've come up with it is win conditioning. Okay, and I like this for two because it's kind of got a dual meaning. One, when we're talking about a win condition, we're talking about what is the thing that you need to do to create a win, okay? And that's a big part of the process, as we'll see. But then on top of it, it's like we are literally conditioning our brain to generate and experience wins, basically generating a mindset where we feel like we are winning, we feel like we are getting what we want, and we are making progress. So it takes practice to do this sort of thing, and this is actually a subset of a lot of future content that I've been working very hard on that will be coming your way soon. But it's really cool. So here are the core ideas behind win conditioning. And if you get this down, you're going to be able to escape this, loserdom, this mentality of constantly missing out, losing, being stressed, that sort of thing. So here are the big pieces. 1, only play games that you can absolutely win. Okay. 2, you want to separate goals from games. Okay, so goal would be a high-level intention. A game would be something that you actively engage with to try and move you toward a goal. Okay, you can think of it as like a goal and like a sub-project, but you'll see it's a little different. And then finally, you want to reduce the number of variables that you interact with in any given moment. Remember, we're talking about that mental overwhelm. Well, we want to clear that up. So let's get into this. Let's do some examples because I think this is what's going to make it click the most for you. So, all right, imagine you have the goal of heal the mentally sick family member. They're mentally ill, they're struggling with a lot of stuff, and you want to get them healthy, okay? Well, we don't make that the game. We don't make that the thing that we actively put ourselves in the win-loss condition with, okay? Because like we said, we only want to play games that we can win, and we can't control that other family member, right? even though that might be our goal, is to get them to do something good for themselves or to heal or that sort of thing. We can have the goal. We can't necessarily control goals, but we can aim for them. Now, if that's the goal, to help them achieve healing, then what would be the game? All right, well, there might be a few different kinds of games in there, but maybe the core one would be you tell them the truth about what you think is best while trying to keep the conversation productive. Okay, so for example, when I'm talking with this person, that's what I have to focus in on. If I start trying to focus on controlling them, I'm going to get frustrated very quickly. But if I focus on, all right, the best thing I can do here, all I can control in me, is that I tell them the truth. I don't lose my temper. I try and have a productive conversation. I know what that looks like, and I can 100% control that as long as I'm thinking about it. And if I do that, well, I win that game, right? And if I win those games and I win a series of those games, well, then that's going to actually move me much more close to my goal, at least as close as I can possibly bring it, right? So when I focus on what I can control, I feel much better. So here's another example, all right? Here's one that I have to do regularly, all right? So maybe the goal is to get my baby to sleep. Maybe she's crying. Maybe she's up in the middle of the night. She does this to me. She's very cute, very adorable, but she drives me nuts sometimes, as babies are wont to do. So I can't control her. I can't force her to do what I want her to do. I can't make her just fall asleep like that, right? But I can play a game that I can win. And what is the game? So if I hear her crying in the middle of the night on the monitor, all right, if I just focus on, blah, I'm upset, or, oh, why doesn't she sleep, or whatever, I just get upset. It makes it worse. And sure, I fall into that sometimes. But if I just focus on the game, what would be the game that I can absolutely win? Well, I can get up, I can change her, I can rock her, and I can put her back down. And then if she keeps crying, I can let her cry for a set period of time and see if she falls asleep. Those are simple steps. It's brain dead actions. It's easy. It's actually very easy. It's very simple. Same with, in the previous example, telling that person the truth and just not freaking out. Like, these are relatively very simple things. And if you focus on doing them, and you tell yourself, this is how I win, well, boom, you can win. And that's all there is to it, right? It's taking a very practical approach to big things, just really carving out where your power should go and only keeping your power in there. And you'd be surprised at how useful this is, right? And it goes across literally all areas of life. Like, so for example, say the goal is you want to make X amount of money. You want to make, $50,000 or six figures, or you want to make $500,000, whatever it is. You pick amount of money. Okay, that's the goal. Well, what's the game? Maybe there's a few different pieces to the game. Maybe the first is come up with a business plan. And what would that look like? It would be like, all right, well, maybe I have to sit down. I have to map out all my options and then create an itemized plan. Okay. Well, on a day-to-day basis, what would be the game? Complete day's actions for the business plan, right? And as long as if you don't know what they are, well, then the first step of the game is, it's write it out, figure out what those steps are. And as long as you are constantly bringing it down to something that you can absolutely win, then you're going to be okay. And that's the thing you want to be watching for, is, are you doing something that you know what to do with? Are you playing a simple, completely winnable game? If you're not, then you're basically inviting a high probability that you're going to get frustrated or disappointed. And you just don't need to do that for the majority of situations in life. It's just a matter of drilling this thought process into your brain. So, it's like maybe you have the goal of removing a sensation of panic and stress because you sit down and you try to plan, but then you get all freaked out. Okay, start a new game. Like, okay, what's the game here? Well, I want to remove this panic or the goal is I want to remove the panic and the stress. So what's a game I can play to move me toward that? Well, maybe I'll go take a walk and focus on breathing deep and walking upright. That's simple, and you can do that, and you can win that game. When you win that game, guess what? You're going to feel better. You're going to feel better, and then you're going to be in a better position to move toward another goal or move further along on that goal by playing a new game. So this is how it works. The problem, though, like I said, is that we just lack the mental discipline. We lack the ability to fire this off reflexively. At least most of us do, and then we kind of wallow in loserdom for a little while. So the heart of this, here's the big key to making this shift into really easy, simple living where you're just doing one thing after the other, you're breaking it down, that sort of thing. You ask yourself a question. You say, what's the game? What's the game right now? And really, it should always be something very, very simple. Like the game right now for me, I speak the outline that I have written in front of me. Simple game. We're always playing them, but I would almost guarantee that in every situation where you get frustrated, overwhelmed, etc., is you're playing a bad game. You're playing a game that you can't win or is very difficult to win. There's way too much that's outside of your control. And so you got to shift it, bring it back to a game that you can win. And you got to ask yourself, what's the game? What's the game? And you want this to be a reflex that fires off whenever you get stressed, whenever you get worried. And as you start practicing this, there's a few things that you can you want to maybe key in on to help you out. First is that the game that you're playing, it's got to be something that you're willing to play. And sometimes we're a bit unreasonable with ourselves, and sometimes our emotions are a bit unreasonable too. So it's like, say, you got to get some work done today. That's the goal. All right. Maybe your rational brain says, we got to do 6 hours of work. Your emotional part says, I don't want to do any work. So what's the game there? Well, the game is find the amount of work that you're actually willing to do and start there. Right. It's sometimes a bargaining process between your rationality and your emotionality. Okay, maybe it's something that it's contingent. Maybe you recognize, all right, well, I'm going to start with getting a solid 45-minute block of focus done, and then I'm going to reassess. Or, maybe it's like, well, I'm going to maybe do, this many hours, or, maybe my low bound is 1 hour and then my high bound is 6 if I have extra energy. It's like you can learn how to construct these sorts of things. And in the rest of the Man of Action series, I talk about all different ways that you can do stuff like that you can construct better, more beneficial games. That's really what it is. It's like learning the art of life and learning the little pieces, the little ways in which you can move forward in a more effective manner. Another big one is say you lost a game. Okay, so this is another piece of how to start implementing this. Let's say you lost a game, meaning say you screwed something up. Okay, well, the next question is, what's the game? All right, just screwed up. What's the new game? The new game, in most scenarios, is learn from it. Turn that situation into a growth point. So you go back through it, walk through it. What did you do wrong? How could you change? That sort of thing. And, I've formalized this process, again, in the Man of Action series in the reset ritual, right? So that's how you do this kind of stuff. And sometimes the game is you're upset because you just screwed something up, but you got to go do something else. Well, what's the game there? It's, remember, just tell yourself that, all right, commit to doing this again at the reset ritual later today. And right now, it's move on to XYZ, whatever the next thing is. Now, if we really want to extract maximum benefit from this kind of approach, from this win conditioning mentality, then you really need to actually affirm yourself when you do get a win. So when you do something, when you do complete a game, when you are in the process of, kicking butt and doing all this kind of stuff, you got to tell yourself that you're doing it. You got to remind yourself hey, this is good. Hey, this is good. This is one step forward. This is great. You got to focus on the fact that you are winning. Because if you don't give that any mental airtime, if you just on to the next thing, and just ignoring the progress that you're making, then you don't actually get any reward sensation from it. You actually then will just start spiraling in this sensation of lack, feeling like no matter what you do, you're never actually making progress. So you need to affirm yourself. And it can be as simple as being oh, great, I just finished that game. I won. Because you did. You set the game up simply, winnably, and then you did it and you won. And you have to reflect on that, and then you feel that. And as you get into the habit of doing that, you accumulate more and more positive feedback from doing this kind of thing. And maybe at first, the games that you can actually get yourself to play are very small. Maybe they're, we're talking about with the productivity stuff, maybe you can only get yourself to do 15, 25 minutes, something like that at a time. And that's okay. That is okay, because as you do that, as you celebrate the win, you realize, oh, this process isn't actually so scary. This is actually great. This actually feels good. And then you'll additionally be getting stronger. You'll be increasing your focus. You'll be increasing your willpower and all this kind of stuff. And as you gain momentum, you basically just, you get hooked on it. You get hooked on winning these authentic games, and you get stronger as you go, and you evolve. So that's really the goal here. Is hopefully this gives you sort of a mental framework to help you break down stressful situations and overwhelm so that you can show up as the guy that you want to be, take smooth action, not spend all this time in escapism or wallowing or that sort of thing. So hopefully you found this, guys. Hopefully you found this useful. Play big. I'll see you guys in the next one.